I have a couple things I want to say to both you guys about this. First off, I recognize that a lot of people did not have great fathers. You know, there's a epidemic of like fatherlessness in our culture that I think is wreaking havoc upon the next generation of men. There's this like insecurity in our own ability, in our own abilities and our ability to get things done and to be the people we're meant to be. Thankfully, I had a father who is my hero. You know, I look at my dad still. He's in his 60s and he still is a strong, incredible leader that like he's loyal and he's like good. He's just good. He's just good, you know? And so like in this talk about heroes that we were talking about before, like my dad is my hero, you know? And so, but I recognize that's not the case for a lot of people. What would you say as fathers? And, you know, I hope to be a father one day. What does it mean to you to be the hero to your kids?
Yeah, man, that's a good question. I'd say hero, you have to break down kind of like what does a hero mean? And to me, a hero means like you empower people, right? Like you remove obstacles and things out of victims' way so that they can be themselves and have freedoms, right? Like a hero is a curator of freedom, an upholder of freedom. And so for me, my kids, how do I support their freedom? Well, for me, again, we're talking about wealth. I'm not a person who's like completely fixed on money, but I realize that money is leverage, right? So I want to give them the opportunities as much as I can, right? Whether that be they want to start their own business or they want to go to a good school or even a trade school or do whatever. Like I want to be able to have the means in which not only my kids, but their kids and, you know, family around me can have more freedoms to pursue their interests and what they're meant to do. So that's being a hero is giving them opportunity and freedom as much as I can and protecting their freedoms. I also think that just being a hero is like, for me, is just engaging, you know, being engaged and thoughtful, and whether that be even just like being silly or taking them for a walk or just spending quality time. Like that's a hero, you know, because there's such, like you said, there's such an epidemic of either dads not being in people's lives, or maybe they are in you know, kids' lives, but they're just not present. So I think presence is heroic as a father.
Is there like, when you see like Lathan do something that you do, does that like invoke something in you? Like, cause when I think of heroes, like all of what you said is true, but I'm also thinking about it from like the individual that has the hero, right? Like, like the individual that has the hero looks at that hero and says, I want to be like them, you know? Like I mean, we talked about the Lion King already, but the way Simba's working on his roar because his dad has a powerful roar, right? And wanting to emulate the best parts of Mufasa, but also be Simba, right? Like I would say, like as like one who wants to be a dad, you know, I would hope like with my own dad, my own father, there are many things about him I want to emulate, and I want to be like him in that way. And in so doing, as you said, freedom, as I am like him in the ways that are good, it also gives me the courage and freedom to be like myself as well with those qualities, right? Like emulation.
Yeah. That's an interesting thought. I appreciate that, because I look at it, the way I look at it, and it's not, you know, better or worse, but the perspective I have is, and maybe just because I recognize that I'm a flawed human being, it's like I don't want you to emulate me. I want to be able to guide you through this life and like help remove obstacles, but I don't want you to be me. I want you to be yourself, you know, and I'm trying to manifest their individuality as much as possible. So the emulation of them doing things that I do or to see myself in them is really not present oftentimes, which is a really, I didn't even think about that until you said something. I just think that I'm a flawed human being, and I get some things right, but I also get a lot of things wrong. And obviously with parenting, as you know, you're just trying to figure it all out as you go along the process. And there's things I definitely get wrong. So I'm just trying to, raise people who love people and have love for themselves.
But isn't that emulation?
Maybe.
Like, I'm just wondering if it's something we can even get away from, right? Like let's say that hopefully the natural spirit of people is to want something, is generosity, is loving other people, and I think that there's a lot of obstacles in humanity's way that keeps that from being the things that people manifest in their own lives. But I would still say that you would hope that your sons would emulate the parts about you that are good.
Yeah.
And that hopefully that they take what you are and then add upon that themselves. The stuff that like hopefully they're better than you are, right? Mm-hmm. But we can't do that without someone to mime. Like, we're mimetic creatures. There's a reason why, like, if you've ever seen the still face experiment that the babies did with their mothers, where the mothers just looked at the babies just with a dead face
after playing with them
and then the babies freak out because there's something in human beings that's looking for love in the person across from them, and they see it, right? And so I think there's no way to really get away from emulation, and I don't think that's a bad thing, unless they're emulating bad things. Like, there's this concept like hurt people, and you have to take intention and like maneuver around the trauma, right? Like go into it and work through it, but to not pass it down again. Like, that takes intention, and that takes like having someone else to emulate, because they didn't have their own hero to emulate. And they, like, if let's say a dad wasn't present, a dad was horrible, you have two choices here, right? As the son of a dad who wasn't present, you can either be that dad and emulate him, or you can emulate another hero, someone who was present. And I don't know if we can get away from that. That's why I think the value of heroes in art and culture is so important, and why I think the deconstruction of them is detrimental. Maybe I'm going like all these ways with this conversation, but
there's a thread there,
right? But my point being, like, and this was the other thing I was going to say about your journey right now, is I saw when you called me and said you lost your job, right? Or when I heard you lost your job, like, so many people would have like sat down and just done nothing and just fumed with anger. But you voluntarily faced that I think injustice, right? And you began to move forward. That is something I hope my nephews have. That's a quality I hope they emulate, because that is something that's the man in the arena. That's the one who strives greatly, and even when they fail, they keep going, they keep pushing. And so I think that's my point, is that, like, obviously don't be a copycat, but sometimes to be the best version of yourself is to be the better version of your heroes.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, there's like this chain of command, because mimicry is everything. That's how we learn everything. We learn everything by mimicking what's around us. That's how we learn to talk and everything. The English language is one of the most complex languages, according to my understanding, on the planet. We were using it by 2 years old. You know what I mean? Like, as a baby, because we were just mimicking what our parents were doing. And so I think this is a lot in like nature and nurture. This is going to be the nurture part side of the equation. Is we learn everything from our parents. We emulate, we mirror everything they're doing. And that's what becomes our world map. And I think it's an important point too, because there's that chain of command. I think this is just my opinion, based on my worldview. But we're like, I think it's important that Jesus says, "Follow me," and so it's our job to follow Christ, and then we pass that down to our spouse, or across to our spouse, let's say, because I don't mean to say that men are above, like the husband's above the spouse. And so this is what the invitation of marriage, which is why traditionally the man gets down on the knee and proposes, will you marry me? So Jesus says, follow me. And so it's our job to keep our eyes focused, like Peter out of the boat, and follow Christ. And then we extend the hand. Once we kind of orient ourselves in that direction, we extend our hands to our spouse and we say, hey, follow me. Come with me. Will you marry me? And then that passes down to our children as well. And I think it's an important point, too, in regards to hero and what it means to be a good father and things like that. And that, yes, the healthiest thing for a person is for their father or mother, hopefully both, to be their hero. And now that I'm thinking about it, listen to you talk, Jake, who has 2 children. So you've got some skin in the game and some experience here. This is my first time at it. But for me, I think that I want to teach Amos, I want to teach my son exactly what you're talking about, Spencer, both of y'all, is it's not about avoiding adversity. And even about what we think of adversity, it's about how to overcome adversity or awaken ourselves within it. So being able to, Teddy Roosevelt, I know a little bit about his story in that in his childhood, he had a medical condition where he wasn't meant to make it through childhood. I think it was some kind of severe asthma or something like that. He had trouble breathing. And so literally a significant amount of his childhood was him gasping for air. And he was like this kind of, I don't mean to be use disrespectful words, but he was kind of a sickly child. And he grew up in this really prestigious wealthy family. And so he was fine. I mean, he was going to be taken care of, but he wanted adventure. He went out to the Dakotas and the Black Hills and he became like a real cowboy and stuff, like the Rough Riders, that's the original Rough Riders. And so I think it's interesting that perhaps, and I would love to be a fly on the wall with some of those conversations between him and his father, but he refused to accept the fate that was given to him, that he was just going to have to kind of just take it easy. And he didn't. He went the other way around. So for me, that makes me think of the image that's coming to mind is being on vacation. Every year we would go on vacation as a family. We'd like go on these road trips and go through the West, and we'd listen to cowboy stories when we're going through like Oklahoma, and it was like super magical. But with long drives, because we go out West. And so I remember like everybody in the van would be passed out. And every once in a while, as a kid, you kind of wake up and see what's going on. And maybe it's like 10 o'clock at night or something. We're still driving. And everyone in the van is asleep except Dad. He's just pounding coffee up there. He's like in it. He's in the fight, and that's fatherhood to me, is being able to be strong in the face of adversity. Not that, sleep deprivation's maybe not the most extreme example, but that's Dad. That's the father, is he's going to be up when everyone else is asleep. And
the Over 100 podcast.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But yeah, so for me, and
podcast for dads.
So, yeah. And I think it's like that face like flint, that Jesus was kind of had this dual relationship with his disciples, where he was like their pal and their friend and their brother in some ways. And there was also, I can't remember what gospel it's in, but it talked about every once in a while the disciples would see him and be scared, like terrified, because he had this face like flint, I think is the, maybe I'm mixing up my scriptures, but basically he had this seriousness about him that, they were like intimidated by. Like he was able to drop into this deep, he was able to pal around with them, but he would drop into this deeper thing when he needed to. And it was like, oh, what's this? And for me, that's what a hero is able to do. And that's what a father's able to do is, hey, let's have fun. I'm going to teach you all kinds of things. We're going to be pals to some degree, but there's also going to be this very deep thing in me, this backbone, this depth, this complexity and this seriousness that I hope I am able to embody by following Jesus and doing that well. And I hope Amos is able to see that and also emulate that.
Yeah.
So Oh, go ahead, man.
No, I was just saying, yeah.
Yeah, it's like I think of, since we're on the topic of Jesus as the ultimate to be emulated character, the ultimate hero. I mean, existing in reality, in history, and also as an archetype in a sense. Like the idea of follow me, the idea of the rabbi was that the disciples of the rabbi would do everything that they did. And so the follow me was less like, hey, check out what I'm doing. And it's more so like, hey, do what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
Give up everything and
like
me.
This is the way to live your life. And so I'm going to show you the way to live your life in a way that not only makes you, because even still, like Peter was a fiery individual that had a lot of passion and zeal. And I guarantee you that Jesus loved that about him. But at the same time, it had to be tempered, right? And so for Peter to follow Christ looked different than for James to follow Christ. I mean, it didn't, but it also did, right? Yeah. Like there's still these things that unite in the grand narrative, that these are the important things, but how we do those important things differ by, I think, temperament and by nature and by nurture and all these sorts of things. So in becoming like the person we want to emulate, we are also becoming a truer form of ourselves, right? Yeah, I think that's all I want to say. But like courage and valor, right? Valor usually is talked about in like the terms of battle, you know? But I don't think it's just that. I think there are many different types of battles, but having this like bravery and courage in the face of like pain and adversity, and then courage, I think, is voluntarily facing the thing that you fear. It's not having no fear. And so I can only imagine someone who's not a father myself, that there's also a level of fear that comes with being a dad, you know, for your children, and hope for them. But courage is facing that and still doing what you know to be right for them in light of that fear.